Ladies and gentlemen, have you ever imagined what secrets could be hidden inside a 100-year-old farm silo? In this remarkable story, a determined farmer stumbles upon a mysterious underground chamber, built by his ancestor only to discover mechanical marvels and ingenious devices that could change everything for his struggling family. From dusty journals packed with secret designs to community rallies that saved the day, this tale is filled with surprising twists and heartfelt moments. Stay with us until the very end to see how history and innovation collide in one unforgettable revelation. And while you're here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button to support our channel and never miss out on more incredible stories like this. Trust me, you'll want to hear how it all concludes, and the journey will keep you on the edge of your seat. August Whitman stood at the edge of the field before dawn, gazing out at rows of withered corn stalks silhouetted against a gray sky. At 48, he still felt too young to be carrying the weight of 5 generations on his shoulders. Yet there was no escaping the burden. His wife, Mary, practical and steady, had turned the kitchen table into a makeshift office where she struggled to balance mounting bills. Their teenage children, Emily, 17, and Daniel, 15, helped before and after school, feeding livestock and repairing fences. On most days, August believed their combined effort would keep the family farm afloat. But the specter of looming debts and an ultimatum from the bank had him feeling more hopeless than ever. Their old red tractor broke down last week, a critical and untimely malfunction that forced him to hire expensive help from a neighbor. Repairs were beyond his budget. Inside the farmhouse, the creaking floors told stories of footsteps long gone. A framed black and white portrait of August's great-grandfather, Walter Whitman, hung in the living room. From his stern expression and resolute posture, one could sense a stubborn streak that seemed to run through the Whitman bloodline. Next to that portrait was a more recent photo of August's father, Harold Whitman, who now sat silently in a rocking chair by the window. Eyes clouded with regret and unspoken worries, Harold had suffered a stroke 2 years ago. And though his mind remained sharp, his ability to speak was severely hampered. He would occasionally manage a few strained words, but mostly he communicated through fleeting gestures, a raised eyebrow, a clenched jaw, a trembling hand. The land itself felt weary under August's boots. Changing weather patterns and corporate competitors had slowly strangled the community of small farms in this part of Iowa. Where once a cluster of proud family operations had thrived, now only a few remained, overshadowed by behemoth conglomerates that could afford cutting-edge machinery, proprietary seeds, and large-scale irrigation systems. He had already turned down more than one buyout offer from an agricultural giant. Part of him knew that signing on the dotted line would solve all financial woes, pay for the children's education, and even ensure a somewhat comfortable retirement. But each time he walked past the rickety barn or paused by the silo, he remembered the stories Harold had told him when he was a boy. Stories of how the Whitman family fought the Dust Bowl, overcame the Great Depression, and rose again during World War II by adopting creative farming methods. Those stories echoed in August's ears, now pressing him to hold on, no matter how dire the numbers looked. It was that old silo, tall and imposing, standing like an abandoned watchtower on the far edge of the property, which held the most potent memories, constructed in 1923 by Walter Whitman. It had always been a source of whispered lore around the region. August never fully understood its original purpose. It was rumored to have a labyrinth of corridors inside multiple compartments and unconventional mechanical systems. Locals joked it looked more like a fortress than a grain storage tower. But with so many other pressing issues, a father who needed medical care, fields battered by storms, and never-ending bills, August had no time to investigate old rumors. Still, the silo's silhouette loomed every morning and every evening, catching his gaze with an almost magnetic pull. Lately, Harold had taken to staring at it through the window for hours at a time, sometimes tapping his left hand lightly on the arm of his chair, as if trying to tell August something. On the night August found a letter in his father's drawer, the letter that would change everything, Harold's tapping stopped. It was as though after years of silent struggle, the elder Whitman finally knew his son was about to unearth a crucial piece of their shared heritage. The letter was sealed inside an unremarkable brown envelope. August came across it by accident while looking for the deed to the farm late that evening after the children had gone to bed and Mary had turned in with a stress headache. He heard a rustling from Harold's room. Worried his father might be in distress, August rushed in. Harold was fine, merely trying to organize old documents on a small writing desk in the corner. In the shuffle, the envelope fell to the floor. Harold froze his eyes wide with an urgency August had seldom seen. Something about that envelope mattered. When August picked it up, Harold pointed a trembling finger at the desk lamp, signaling he wanted August to read it right away. Inside was a single folded sheet of paper with trembling handwriting. The lines were shaky but legible. My son, if the day comes you see no way out, remember our family's promise. Look to what Walter left behind in the silo. Follow the instructions in the lockbox under my bed. Your father, August's heart pounded. Harold's stroke had taken away much of his ability to speak or write. Yet here was a note penned in obvious struggle. Before August could ask questions, Harold pressed a small iron key into his hand and tapped on the hardwood floor with his cane, pointing down under the bed. Within minutes, August pulled out an old metal lockbox covered in dust. Harold's eyes glistened with relief and apprehension, as if the old man had guarded a secret for decades. Inside the box lay a faded photograph of Walter Whitman, the building crew around the newly constructed silo, and a folded paper that seemed to be a building plan drawn in neat pencil lines. At the bottom of the plan was a cryptic inscription: Innovation thrives in shadows. The storm cannot claim what it cannot see. The letter from Harold had mentioned following instructions, so August carefully scanned each line. The blueprint showed standard silo compartments, but there was an indication of a secret entry beneath the foundation, accessible through a hatch at ground level. August had walked past that silo 1,000 times and never noticed any hidden panel. He looked up at Harold. The older man gave a single nod, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. It was the nod of someone who'd carried knowledge too heavy to bear alone. August realized that maybe Harold had wanted to reveal this secret earlier, but the stroke kept him from articulating it. A swirl of questions raged in August's mind. Why hide a secret chamber? Could it be that Walter prepared for some catastrophic event nearly a century ago? Was this the solution to the family's financial dire straits, or merely a historical curiosity? In the days that followed, August fought waves of skepticism. The farm was on the brink of foreclosure. How would rummaging around an old silo help? But he couldn't deny Harold's insistence. The note, the blueprint, and the aged photograph depicted more than just a routine construction. Walter Whitman had built the silo as if it were a fortress or a well-guarded laboratory. Though August was not an especially spiritual man, the sense of destiny surrounding this discovery unsettled him. He approached Mary with the letter in the lockbox one evening. Despite her exhaustion, Mary's eyes lit up at the mention of a hidden blueprint. She often teased August about his love for old stories, but seeing how serious he was, she agreed to help him explore that night, while the children did their homework by candlelight. An unfortunate necessity after the local utility threatened to shut off their electricity if bills remained unpaid. August and Mary pored over the silo drawings. Each pencil line told a tale of ambition and ingenuity. Could Walter's hidden engineering offer a lifeline for the farm? Or were they chasing a ghost from the past? Before delving into the silo's secrets, August had to handle the present-day crisis of overdue loans and insufficient crop yields. The local bank manager, Mr. Hopkins, had given him a stern warning: either show a viable plan to repay the machinery loan within the next 3 weeks or lose the property. In small-town Iowa, such conversations were bittersweet. August had grown up with Mr. Hopkins' son, playing baseball in the summers and building snow forts in the winters. Now that same man was delivering grim ultimatums bound by corporate policies still. August clung to the newfound clue from Harold. During late-night brainstorming sessions, he and Mary speculated on what might lie beneath the silo's foundation. Could Walter have hidden valuable antiques or some form of advanced mechanical invention that would sell for a fortune to collectors? Mary's face brightened at the possibility. She worked part-time at the local library and knew how rare farm implements from the 1920s could fetch surprising sums. But a small part of her also feared disappointment, that they might find nothing more than rusted metal. On the third day after discovering the lockbox, August gathered tools: crowbars, heavy-duty flashlights, a battery-powered lantern, and a mason's hammer. He wasn't sure what kind of entry he might find, but the blueprint suggested some form of trapdoor or hidden door on the silo's exterior base. He asked Daniel, his mechanically inclined teenage son, to join him. The boy had grown up watching how August repaired faulty machinery, learning the basics of welding and small engine repair before he turned 15. Daniel's enthusiasm for an adventure was palpable. Emily, more academically minded, offered to look up old newspaper archives at the library, hoping to find references to Walter's construction project. Approaching the silo that afternoon, August felt a mixture of excitement and dread. The structure towered above its corrugated metal sides, rusted in patches. the top half caked with the remnants of wind-blown dirt from storms past. He began tapping along the bottom circumference with the mason's hammer, listening for changes in tone. At first, the hollow clang was consistent, but after about a dozen steps, the sound shifted to a duller note. Daniel crouched low and found a subtle seam in the metal nearly imperceptible behind layers of peeling paint. They pried carefully, and the seam gave way to a concealed panel about 2 feet square. Behind it lay a solid wooden hatch with iron hinges. The wood surprisingly looked well preserved, as if sealed against moisture. Stenciled on it in chipped white paint were the initials W for Walter Whitman and a date 1923. August's breath caught. The sense of stepping into a long-lost piece of family history sent chills up his spine. Pa Daniel murmured, "This is it, isn't it? Let's open it." August said, though his heart thumped wildly. If there was something inside that could help them keep the farm, he had to see it through. Yet he also felt an odd reverence, as if intruding on sacred ground. Daniel set to work loosening the iron hinges, which creaked in protest but didn't snap. The flickering glow of the flashlight revealed a ladder descending into darkness. Cold air wafted up from below, carrying the scent of earth and metal. They exchanged a glance. August held on to the rung, testing if it could support his weight. The ladder felt steady enough. He looked at Daniel, whose eyes shone with equal parts fear and curiosity. "Stay close to me," August whispered as they prepared to descend into the silo's hidden underworld. Stepping down into the darkness, August felt like an archaeologist exploring an ancient tomb. Each metal rung vibrated under his boots, echoing through the silence below. Daniel followed, shining the flashlight around the cramped corridor as they reached the bottom. The space wasn't much taller than August's 6-foot frame, forcing him to hunch slightly. The air tasted stale, as if it had remained sealed off for decades. In front of them stretched a narrow passage lined with wooden beams that appeared more robust than the typical support structures used in silo construction of the 1920s. Flickers of rust on metal brackets suggested a combination of wood and iron, an unusual design for a humble grain silo. Daniel ran his hand across the beams and noted the near-perfect dovetail joints. Someone really knew what they were doing, he said, voice trembling with excitement. They pressed forward, each footstep a hushed crunch on the dirt floor. After about 20 feet, the passage opened into a rectangular chamber. To the left stood a large workbench cluttered with items covered in canvas tarps. August gingerly pulled back the nearest tarp, revealing a set of polished brass gears and mechanisms. The intricacy took his breath away. Spirals of metal rods and cogs meticulously arranged. Each piece looked handcrafted. Daniel let out a small gasp, shining the light over the perfectly interlocking components. Hanging on the wall above the bench were sketches pinned to corkboard, line drawings of unusual contraptions. Though somewhat yellowed, the paper hadn't fully degraded. Symbols and handwritten notes in Walter Whitman's distinct scrawl filled the margins. Some were diagrams of water pumps. Others showed an unfamiliar type of grain dispenser that appeared to minimize spoilage. To August's amateur eye, they resembled prototypes of more advanced agricultural machinery. "Dad, check this out," Daniel said, pointing to a blueprint pinned in the center. It depicted a tall cylindrical structure, reminiscent of their silo, but with an internal mechanism that channeled air and water in a spiral pattern. Tiny notes read, "Reduce evaporation, maintain consistent temperature, and keep seeds fresh indefinitely." August recognized the implication. Walter had attempted to design a system that could store grain or seeds for extended periods without spoiling, a breakthrough that would have been revolutionary if introduced in the 1920s. Nearby, a metal cabinet caught August's eye. The door creaked open to reveal drawers lined with carefully labeled journals. He pulled out one volume, flipping through pages of neat handwriting. The journals recounted experiments with irrigation, crop rotation, and manual vacuum sealing devices, decades before modern farmers would adopt similar concepts. Some entries speculated on achieving near-perfect preservation of seeds to guard against drought or famine. Walter's ambition seemed to go far beyond the needs of a single farm. As they immersed themselves in these relics of innovation, a wave of gratitude and awe washed over August. Perhaps this hidden trove was more than a historical curiosity. It could be the key to revitalizing their failing operation. If the designs were proven workable, even partially, they might modernize the farm without the crushing debt of new machinery. The question was, why did Walter hide it so thoroughly? Standing in the soft lantern glow, August heard the faint sound of footsteps from above. He glanced up to see Mary peeking down the ladder, calling, "Are you both okay?" She sounded anxious. August and Daniel exchanged a grin, beckoning her to join them. Carefully, Mary descended her breath, catching at the sight of the mechanical wonders. She was a librarian by profession and had spent countless hours shelving books on history and agriculture, but she'd never seen anything like this living evidence of an inventor's genius tucked beneath the very soil they tended. And so the three of them stood there united in wonder on the threshold of a secret legacy that might just change their fortunes. That night, Mary spread the journals across the dining room table, carefully reading entries aloud, while August and Daniel listened rapt. Emily returned from the library with old newspaper clippings. Though most articles merely mentioned that Walter Whitman was an innovative farmer who had tested new methods, none detailed the scale of his hidden workshop. It was as if the local press at the time either didn't know the extent of his work or had been subtly discouraged from discussing it. Mary deciphered a recurring theme in Walter's notes. He wanted to protect small farmers from economic collapse. In the 1920s, rumors of land speculation and looming financial troubles ran rampant. Some references pointed to a group of local innovators who met clandestinely to share techniques that corporations might have patented or monopolized had they been made public. Walter's writing waxed poetic at times, praising the resilience of rural communities and insisting that technology should serve the farmer, not the other way around. A curious mention kept appearing: Harvest Haven Society. At first, Mary thought it might be a local farmers' cooperative, but references to it in the journals sounded more secretive. Walter seemed to believe the Harvest Haven Society was a loose alliance of farmers and mechanics who tinkered and exchanged designs under the radar. They feared that if big companies caught wind of their breakthroughs, they'd buy or bully them out, turning families into tenant laborers. Ironically, a century later, August and Mary faced a similar corporate onslaught, only now in a modern context. From what they could piece together, Walter had decided to hide the more advanced prototypes underground, creating a space safe from both prying eyes and the unpredictability of storms. It was a gamble. By bearing his knowledge, he risked it, never seeing the light of day. But evidently he believed a future descendant might uncover it at a time of dire need. A particular journal entry underlined that idea. If these times grow dark again, maybe blood will call blood and the farm shall find its way. Suddenly, a creaking sound from the living room caught their attention. Harold, in his rocking chair, tapped the floor with his cane and nodded toward the journals. Although speech eluded him, his eyes burned with clarity. Mary hurried over, gently taking his hand. "It's real," she whispered as if seeking confirmation. Harold squeezed her fingers. Emily approached them, carrying the oldest newspaper clipping she could find about Walter. It was dated 1930, mid-Depression era, stating that Walter Whitman donated a significant portion of his harvest to neighboring farms struck by drought. This was a year after he completed the silo. Emily said quietly, "He must have used some of the technology in there to get such a surplus while everyone else was struggling." August rubbed the back of his neck, both concerned and exhilarated. "It was growing late, and the bank's ultimatum felt like a ticking clock, Mary," he said softly. "Do you think we can make use of these designs right now?" He hesitated, glancing at Daniel, who still had mechanic's grease on his fingertips from investigating the gear assemblies. Mary flipped through page after page. "Some of this is within our skill set: irrigation improvements, advanced seed preservation, mechanical harvest aids. If they work as described, we might cut costs drastically." She set down one journal and picked up another. "I suspect we'll need to adapt them to modern conditions. But yes, August, I think we can try." In Harold's silent approval, August found the courage to move forward. He'd never anticipated becoming a tinkerer or inventor, but circumstances demanded desperate measures. Tomorrow he would venture back down to the hidden workshop, armed with a plan and a glimmer of hope that Walter's century-old vision might bring the Whitman farm back from the brink. The next morning, August woke before sunrise to a sensation he hadn't felt in months. Possibility. There was a crispness in the air that spoke of new beginnings. With the roosters still dozing, he and Daniel slipped out to the workshop beneath the silo. They carried a toolbox, spare parts, and some modern battery-powered devices. Mary stayed behind to make breakfast and look after Harold, who would likely awake soon and need help dressing. Inside the secret chamber, they lit lanterns and set them on improvised hooks along the walls, illuminating the central workbench. Dust motes floated through the light like tiny planets in a forgotten cosmos. The items they intended to tackle first were the simpler prototypes: a specialized water pump system that relied on pressurized air and a minimal power grain dispenser meant to reduce contamination and labor. August and Daniel cross-referenced Walter's journals for assembly instructions. The language was direct but thorough, describing each gear ratio and the mechanical steps in old-fashioned terms. Working side by side, father and son discovered they made an effective team. Daniel's dexterous hands navigated the antique bolts and washers, while August interpreted the broader blueprint, ensuring they assembled the correct pieces in the correct order. Every so often, Daniel would exclaim, "That's brilliant." Upon realizing Walter had solved common engineering problems, like preventing clogging or rust using materials readily available in the early 1900s. If the design worked, then how much more efficient might it be when combined with today's resources? Mary joined them a few hours later. Emily in tow with a digital camera. She wanted to document every step, partly for reference and partly out of sheer amazement. Harold remained in the farmhouse, resting under Emily's earlier care. While August was anxious about leaving his father alone, Harold seemed at peace, as if he trusted the outcome. Progress was slow, but steady. By mid-afternoon, they had a functional version of Walter's pump. It whirred with a low hum, driven by a small motor. Daniel rigged up when they tested it in a barrel of water near the silo entrance. The pressure remained consistent, just as Walter's notes predicted. The contraption could potentially replace their aging irrigation system that devoured electricity and often malfunctioned. The grain dispenser was next. The original blueprint indicated that it worked without electricity, using a combination of levers, springs, and gravitational flow. The idea was to dispense precise amounts of grain into feed troughs, reducing waste. Modern feed distributors achieve similar outcomes with expensive electronics. Walter's design needed only mechanical input. Mary marveled at the brilliance of harnessing gravity and counterweights so elegantly. By sunset, they had tested both prototypes in rudimentary conditions. Excited but not entirely sure how they would scale it up for the entire farm, August and Mary decided they would spend the next few days systematically installing the pump and dispenser in key areas like the vegetable gardens and chicken coops to see if they truly delivered efficiency gains. If they did, it could buy them time, perhaps enough to stave off bankruptcy. That evening, as they returned to the farmhouse, Harold sat at the table, an old radio playing a static-laden country song. He offered August a faint smile, something he rarely managed after the stroke. Then, with painstaking effort, he mouthed three words barely audible. "Keep going, boy." The emotional weight of that moment nearly brought August to tears. He gently placed a hand on his father's shoulder, whispering, "We will, Dad. We promise." The darkness outside swallowed the silo silhouette, but inside each of them a spark of hope glowed bright. Within days, whispers spread through the community that the Whitmans were experimenting with unusual contraptions passed down from an ancestor small-town grapevine. Being what it was, neighbors stopped by, feigning casual chat while their eyes darted around for signs of these mysterious inventions. Some were supportive, like old Mr. Pearson from the adjacent property, who openly said he hoped the newfangled pump would solve their drought issues. Others were skeptical or even suspicious, worried that August might be using technology too experimental. The local feed store owner, Janice Parker, offered them discounted supplies if they could demonstrate the viability of the mechanical grain dispenser in a public setting. "You do that," she said with a laugh, "and I might consider carrying replicas of Walter Whitman's designs for other farmers to buy." Janice's optimism fueled August's determination. He arranged a demonstration day for the following week. Financial stress still loomed large. On a chilly Wednesday morning, Emmett Hopkins from the bank arrived in a polished black sedan. He emerged with a solemn face, carrying a clipboard. August braced himself, stepping onto the porch to greet him. After an exchange of pleasantries, Hopkins delivered his message. The Whitmans were out of time. A final payment was due in less than 2 weeks, or the bank would proceed with foreclosure. No extension. No exceptions. A tightness gripped August's chest. He wanted to rage at the man, but Hopkins was just a cog in a much bigger system. "I understand," August managed calmly. Hopkins, looking genuinely regretful, insisted this was not personal, that times were tough. He left, promising to check back soon. Watching the car drive away, August felt a tremor in his hands. The entire farm. All that history might be lost. Later, August and Mary went for a walk around the property to clear their minds. They passed weather-beaten fences in need of repair, a sagging barn roof, and a quiet orchard that had once burst with apples. Mary sighed, mentioning Emily's college prospects and Daniel's dream of opening his own machine shop someday. "We can't let those dreams die," she said, "but we can't bury our heads in the sand either. We need a real plan." They decided to go all in on Walter's prototypes. August pitched the idea of holding a small community gathering like a mini open house to showcase the new irrigation pump and grain dispenser in action. If neighbors saw the potential benefits, they might invest or at least support the cause. Maybe a co-op arrangement could be formed, pooling resources to keep the land. The concept wasn't entirely new to Iowa's tight-knit farming community. Historically, neighbors often rallied together to save each other from foreclosure. When they shared the plan with Emily and Daniel, the children expressed both excitement and worry. Emily asked, "Is it enough time, Dad? The pump and dispenser help, but we're behind on planting schedules, and the bank is breathing down our neck." August shrugged. "Walter's journals. Mention more designs. We haven't tested yet. We'll do what we can." Harold sat quietly through the discussion, eyes darting from face to face as they spoke. At one point, he stood using his cane to shuffle toward the door leading to the porch. With intense concentration, he managed to speak in short bursts. "Show them how it used to be." Though the phrasing was halting, the message was clear. Harold believed in a demonstration of tradition meeting innovation, perhaps the best chance to unite the community behind them. In the week leading to the demonstration, the Whitman farm buzzed with an energy it hadn't known in years. Mary took charge of organizing the event, sending out handwritten invitations on plain index cards, a warm personal touch that neighbors appreciated. Emily designed simple flyers and posted them at the church bulletin board, the feed store, and the local diner. Daniel fine-tuned the irrigation pump, adjusting the pulley system for smoother operation. August rummaged deeper into Walter's notes, hoping to uncover any additional improvements that could make their presentation unforgettable. A gem of an idea surfaced in one of the journals. Walter had drawn up plans for a vertical garden rig, a contraption that utilized the silo's walls to grow vegetables in stacked boxes fed by a low-cost drip system. The concept resembled modern hydroponic towers, but relied mainly on gravity wooden troughs and a specialized drip regulator that used minimal water. August couldn't replicate the entire system in just a few days, but he could at least build a miniature model to spark curiosity. When Mary mentioned the vertical garden rig to Harold, the old man responded with a slow, proud nod. August suspected that Harold had known about these ideas for quite some time, maybe gleaned from older family members or diaries. As a boy, August remembered hearing tales of clever ways to grow more with less land, but he never realized they stemmed from actual designs. D-Day arrived on a sunny Saturday morning, a rare gift in early spring. Trucks and tractors kicked up dust on the long driveway to the Whitman farm, which Mary had decorated with simple ribbons and a handmade sign reading, "Welcome to Whitman Innovation Day." By 10 o'clock, a small crowd of about 30 people had gathered. They included local farmers, a few curious townsfolk, and even Mr. Pearson's grandchildren. Janice Parker, from the feed store, arrived with a trailer of her own, bringing feed samples to test with the mechanical dispenser. She also brought a camera crew from the local cable channel, excited to film a positive community story amidst a news cycle of foreclosures and bankruptcies. August tried to quell his nerves as people milled about, chatting in small groups. If these prototypes didn't impress, he worried it would only speed up the farm's demise. With Daniel at his side, August led the group to a freshly tilled patch of land near the silo. He showed how the homemade irrigation pump channeled water from a nearby well through a series of pipes and hoses, delivering it gently to rows of vegetables. The steady whisper-like hum of the pump contrasted with the chugging of the farm's older machinery. A few farmers knelt down to inspect the soil, noting how it stayed moist without turning into mud. "Saves water, saves money," August explained, "and it's easier on the crops." Next, Janice filled the mechanical dispenser with a mix of feed. At first, the contraption stood silent, an unremarkable metal box on wooden legs. But when Daniel pulled a lever, gears clicked, springs compressed, and precise portions of feed were dispensed into troughs. No spills, no coons. The audience murmured in approval. Mr. Pearson's eyes gleamed. "My grandkids could feed the animals in half the time with that," he said, a grin breaking across his weathered face. Momentum built. A few older farmers asked technical questions, while younger ones snapped photos and recorded videos. Mary explained that these designs were gleaned from their ancestors' journals and that they intended to share them, not sell them for profit. Walter Whitman believed in knowledge belonging to the community, she said with quiet conviction. The open generosity caught people's attention, especially in an era where every new idea seemed patented and sold for profit. If the plan worked, the entire region might benefit. Before the crowd dispersed, August surprised them with one final demonstration. He revealed a small-scale version of the vertical garden rig set up against the silo's outer wall, using recycled wood planks, a handful of clay pots, and a carefully rigged drip system. He showed how leafy greens could be grown in tiers, saving space. Even for the older farmers who'd seen their share of quirky experiments, this was new. The conversation soon buzzed with possibilities. Could such rigs be placed inside old barns during winter or along sunlit walls to extend growing seasons? By lunchtime, folks spread out in the yard sharing sandwiches, iced tea, and laughter. The demonstration felt more like a county fair than a critical business pitch. Emily walked around capturing candid photos while Daniel proudly answered mechanical questions about spring tension or gear alignment. Many neighbors approached August to express their admiration. They didn't see him as a man teetering on financial ruin, but as an innovator carrying forward a family legacy. Janice interviewed August for the local cable show, peppering him with questions about whether he planned to patent any of the devices or partner with a large company. August stood firm. We're part of this community. If these ideas can help us all stay on our land, that's exactly what Walter would have wanted. He didn't mention the bank's foreclosure deadline, not wanting to inject gloom into an otherwise hopeful day, but the undercurrent of urgency weighed on him. Across the yard, Harold sat on a sturdy chair, a wool blanket draped over his legs, shading his eyes from the midday sun. He watched intently, a slight smile curving his lips whenever someone marveled at the antique designs. More than once, August saw tears forming in Harold's eyes. Perhaps it was the fulfillment of a dream left dormant since Harold was young, hearing stories directly from Walter himself, or perhaps it was simple gratitude that the farm had one last fight in it, one final chance to stand proud among the corporations that had swallowed so many others. As the day wound down, the crowd thinned. Some lingered to help pack up, while others promised to follow up soon. One of the older farmers, a man named Clyde, sidled up to August and made an offer to buy or lease some of the prototypes. August politely declined, insisting he'd rather teach others how to build their own than become a supplier. Clyde gave a thoughtful nod. Your great-granddaddy was a visionary, so are you. Let's hope this is just the beginning. That evening, with the yard quiet again, August and Mary took a moment to reflect. The demonstration had been a success in terms of community interest, but would it result in financial salvation? Some neighbors hinted they might be willing to invest or form a co-op, but nothing was set in stone. They still had less than 2 weeks before the bank's final notice kicked in. On a positive note, several visitors made it clear they wanted to adopt the designs immediately, potentially generating enough short-term income for the Whitmans to stave off foreclosure. Emily and Daniel were brimming with pride, but also exhaustion. I didn't realize how much people crave something new, Emily mused. Or maybe they just want hope, Daniel nodded. We might have just given them that. Harold settled back in the rocking chair, patted August's arm gently, his eyes brimming with unspoken gratitude. In that quiet household, the sense of possibility clung to every corner. Over the next few days, inquiries poured in. Farmers who couldn't attend the event heard about it through neighbors or caught Janice's cable show segment. Some offered to pay small sums for drawings of the prototypes, while others asked for help in constructing the devices. August spent hours on the phone in an old landline that crackled with every call, explaining gear ratios and water pressure. Mary Ever, the organizer, created typed instruction sheets for the irrigation pump and grain dispenser, gleaning every detail from Walter's journals. Though they didn't ask for much money, each small payment or thank you donation helped. The Whitmans managed to buy enough time to keep the electricity on, feed their livestock, and service the tractor's engine. More promisingly, a few local farmers suggested forming a cooperative that would pool funds to create a mechanical library where people could borrow or replicate parts. This was exactly the kind of collaboration Walter's notes had hinted at: shared knowledge, ensuring everyone could remain independent from large corporations. During this flurry of activity, Harold had moments of clarity where he would scrawl short notes on a piece of paper. Once he wrote check orchard plan, pointing to a specific journal entry. It referred to a method of spacing fruit trees to maximize pollination and reduce disease tied into a windbreak design around the silo. Another time he scribbled, use slag lime mix, referencing a portion of Walter's text about enhancing soil fertility. Each tip seemed to open a new door to efficiency. August couldn't help but feel that his father was bridging past and present, ensuring Walter's dream found its rightful place in this critical moment. Still, the clock ticked toward the bank's deadline. One afternoon, August decided he could no longer hide his precarious finances from the community. He placed a call to Mr. Pearson and confessed he needed a substantial infusion of cash to avoid foreclosure, or he risked losing the farm. Within hours, Mr. Pearson organized a meeting at the Whitman property inviting a handful of key families. That evening, 7 neighbors gathered around the Whitmans' dining table. Harold was wheeled in so he could observe Mary serve coffee in mismatched mugs, and the tension was palpable. Each farmer shared their own struggles: rising seed costs, unpredictable weather, bigger farms muscling them out of markets. Yet the prototypes August shared gave them a reason to believe they could reduce their dependence on corporate suppliers. If they invested collectively, they'd not only help August pay off the immediate debt, but also create a local manufacturing hub for these designs. Daniel hesitated. He was just a teenager, but he had mechanical skills. Could he oversee production of some parts? If they pooled resources. Emily offered to help with record keeping and communications. Mary would coordinate. A plan formed. They would create a private fund with each investor buying a share. In return, they'd have access to the designs training and first priority on any new prototypes from Walter's hidden workshop. Eventually, the group could sell these systems to outsiders, splitting profits fairly. The meeting lasted late into the night, covering everything from legalities. They decided to keep it informal at first to cost estimates for purchasing raw materials. By the time the neighbors left yawning and stamping the chill from their feet, it seemed a deal was within reach. August's relief was overshadowed by a flicker of doubt. Would it truly raise enough money in time? If not the entire farm, and Walter's legacy might vanish in a bank auction. In the living room, Harold mouthed silent words that August interpreted as encouragement. They had come too far to turn back now. The next morning, August started making phone calls to gather more precise quotes on metal, wood, and basic hardware. Meanwhile, Mary stayed busy organizing the flurry of pledges from the community. Some neighbors could only offer a few $100s. Others promised labor or resources. It was a patchwork solution, but the spirit of cooperation reminded August of old stories about barn raisings, where entire communities would come together to lift the rafters in a single day. Emily, tapping into her digital savvy side, created a simple online fundraiser. She wrote a heartfelt story about the Whitman legacy, how her great-great-grandfather designed forward-thinking machines to keep small farms self-reliant. Photos showed the hidden workshop's relics, the new contraptions in action, and Harold smiling through tears at the demonstration event. Friends from out of state, plus a few curious strangers, began to contribute small donations. While it wasn't a fortune, the trickle of support felt like validation. However, not everyone viewed this rising tide of grassroots empowerment kindly. A representative from a major agricultural corporation, Midland Harvest Consolidated, reached out requesting a meeting. At first, August tried to be polite, hearing them out. The representative, a well-dressed woman named Carla Bennett, arrived in a sleek SUV and offered to buy the farm's intellectual property rights to any mechanical devices. Carla hinted that her company could roll them out nationwide, guaranteeing the Whitmans a decent payout. August politely declined, explaining that Walter's core vision was to keep the designs publicly accessible and community-driven. Carla's smile tightened. She left behind a business card in case you change your mind. That evening, in a conversation that turned heated, Mary voiced her fear. What if they try to undercut us? They have lawyers' money, everything we don't. August responded with a determined shake of his head. Walter hid these designs for a reason. I won't sell them off to the same forces that would reduce us to tenants. Even as he spoke, he felt the weight of that vow. The bank's clock was merciless and more powerful. Adversaries were beginning to circle. A day later, an unexpected visitor arrived, Mr. Hopkins from the bank. Having heard of the cooperative plan, he asked for details. August decided honesty was best and laid out the scheme to raise enough capital to clear the arrears on the machinery loan. Hopkins listened with a measured expression. At the end, he said, if you can show me firm commitments and a down payment by next Monday, I might be able to extend the final deadline a bit longer. That bit longer was music to August's ears. Maybe a miracle was possible. As Monday neared, Mary tallied the pledges. Even with local support, they were short by a few $1,000s. The online fundraiser's momentum had slowed. Emily tried everything, posting updates, uploading new photos, but interest plateaued. Just when it seemed they might have to accept partial defeat, a retired neighbor, Agnes Robinson, arrived with an envelope of savings bonds. My late husband always believed in the small farmer. She said, I'm too old to see that money go to waste. Use it. Her donation bridged most of the gap. Gratitude overwhelmed August as he realized the community had come together in a way that defied modern cynicism. It wasn't a done deal, but they had a fighting chance. On Sunday night, the Whitmans prepared all the paperwork to present to Mr. Hopkins the next day, showing how they planned to use the funds to keep the farm running and develop the mechanical systems. Harold watched from his chair, occasionally nodding with that silent pride that needed no words. Monday dawned bright and clear, as if nature itself offered a sign of hope. August headed to the bank, carrying a folder of signed pledges receipts and a check representing the cooperative's pooled funds. He was dressed in his only suit, a relic from his sister's wedding years ago, and the tie felt like a noose around his neck. Mary insisted that presenting a professional front mattered when dealing with institutional figures. Mr. Hopkins greeted him in a small office cramped with filing cabinets. The banker's demeanor was polite but guarded, as if anticipating a shortfall. When August laid out the documents and the check, Hopkins carefully scrutinized every signature. A nerve-wracking 20 minutes passed as the bank manager typed away at his computer, verifying accounts. Finally, he turned to August and said, "Congratulations, you've met the required down payment. I can grant you a 6-month extension on the remainder. After that, the terms will need renegotiation, but at least for now you're safe." Relief crashed over August like a tidal wave. He stammered his thanks, shaking Hopkins's hand more vigorously than he intended. As he left the bank, he paused on the sidewalk, letting out a shaky breath. The farm was not fully saved. 6 months was still a tight window, but they had breathing room. Enough time to ramp up production of these mechanical marvels, demonstrate their viability, and secure additional income. For the first time in a long while, the future didn't look so bleak. Back at home, the news sparked celebration. Mary hugged him tight, tears streaming. Daniel punched the air with a triumphant whoop, and Emily beamed quietly, calling neighbors to share the update. Harold, upon hearing the extension was granted, reached for August's hand and managed 3 words each etched in breathy determination. Finish. His work. August understood exactly what that meant. Walter's entire array of designs, not just the handful they had tested, needed to come to life if possible. One neighbor, Clyde, organized a volunteer workday to help the Whitmans finish planting fields they had neglected due to uncertainty. Tractors and farm hands converged on the land, working in a flurry of camaraderie. Meanwhile, Daniel supervised a makeshift assembly line in the silo's underground chamber, cranking out simplified versions of the irrigation pump. A local welder contributed scraps of steel. Another neighbor offered an old lathe to shape metal parts. The space thrummed with hammering welding sparks and the hum of possibility. Watching from a vantage point by the barn, August reflected on how adversity had spurred this renaissance of community spirit. He felt a pang of guilt that it took near disaster to bring them all together. But overshadowing that guilt was a swelling pride in what they were accomplishing. Hand in hand, neighbor helping neighbor, guided by Walter's century-old genius, Mary set up a rotating schedule so that volunteers would have meals and breaks, ensuring no one overworked themselves. The orchard plan Harold insisted upon was also put into motion, with newly spaced saplings ready for fruit production. In a few years, as twilight fell on that communal workday, the land bore fresh signs of revival. Neatly planted rows, repaired fences, newly installed water lines, and a future orchard that might one day flourish. A line of vehicles slowly trickled out of the driveway, headlights bobbing away into the night. The Whitmans, exhausted, gathered in the farmhouse kitchen. Despite aches and fatigue, an undeniable sense of gratitude soaked into the walls. August had never felt more connected to both his family and the generations before him. In the weeks that followed, the cooperative idea blossomed into something far larger than August had imagined. Farmers from neighboring counties heard about the revived Whitman farm. A few even made the trip to see for themselves, driving for hours, just to lay eyes on the mechanical pump in action, or the grain dispenser that never seemed to jam. Word of mouth, local TV segments, and social media posts spread the story. Soon August found himself fielding calls from out-of-state acquaintances of neighbors' cousins, people interested in adopting these back-to-basics solutions that somehow outperformed modern, complex machinery. Emily juggled phone inquiries, collecting addresses, and shipping out the newly printed instruction booklets Mary had compiled. Daniel spent his time refining the prototypes, ensuring they could be built without needing specialized parts. Meanwhile, August oversaw an ever-growing list of orders for assemblies kits. Not everyone was a do-it-yourself farmer. Some just wanted a kit they could bolt together. This new revenue stream trickled in not enough to make them wealthy, but enough to pay down more debt and keep improvements rolling. Around the farmhouse, small repairs no longer seemed daunting, with cash flow improving. Mary hired a local handyman to fix the roof and shore up the aging porch. She also replaced worn-out windows that whistled in the winter wind. The transformation was as much spiritual as physical, the sense of impending doom. Receded, replaced by an atmosphere of collaboration, pride, and cautious optimism. Harold observed it all from his rocking chair, or while being guided outside on sunny days. He often closed his eyes, listening to the clank of metal and the hum of conversation in the yard, a faint smile on his lips. Occasionally he mumbled incomplete phrases about how Walter would be proud. August would kneel by Harold, promising they'd honor Walter's legacy fully. Then Harold would pat August's arm and nod content in the knowledge that the baton of innovation had been passed to capable hands. But not everyone embraced the Whitman's success. Carla Bennett from Midland Harvest, a Consolidated, reappeared one afternoon with a more aggressive proposal, an outright purchase of the silo's hidden workshop in all designs. This time she arrived with two assistants who brandished portfolios of legal documents. "We're talking about real money, Mr. Whitman," Carla said, a practiced smile on her face. "Enough to pay off your entire farm and more." August refused once again. Firm but polite, he explained that any contract transferring exclusive rights would betray the very purpose of these designs. Carla's assistants exchanged glances. One even muttered something about potential legal battles if the Whitmans had inadvertently infringed on existing patents. August felt a spike of fear, but Mary calmly stated they had legal counsel of their own. One of the cooperative members was in fact a retired lawyer. Annoyed, Carla left with a chilly handshake. But the encounter left August uneasy. Their operation was fragile, built on trust and communal goodwill. If a big corporation decided to mount a lawsuit, they could drown the Whitmans in legal fees. That night, August paced the living room floor, wrestling with the possible repercussions. Mary, seeing his distress, reminded him they had the community's backing. "Walter's designs are in the public domain now. Or soon will be," she said. "We're documenting them online for free. Let Midland Harvest sue the entire county if they want." Her logic brought a measure of comfort. If knowledge was shared widely enough, it was no longer a secret that could be bottled up. The best defense against corporate takeover might simply be transparency. Ironic, considering Walter had once hidden these ideas underground. On a sunny Saturday in midsummer, the Whitmans hosted a second Innovation Day, this time drawing dozens more visitors, including journalists from regional newspapers and a couple from a national farming magazine. The orchard was showing tiny buds, the irrigation system kept fields lush, and the mechanical dispensers proved themselves daily as Daniel proudly showed off maintenance tricks. The entire farm shone under the midday sun, a testament to what collaboration and old-fashioned ingenuity could achieve. Mary, bustling around to greet guests, guided them to a makeshift exhibition area near the silo where prototypes and new variations lined tables. One particularly interesting addition was a heat-efficient greenhouse design adapted from Walter's notes on thermodynamics. Emily had researched modern greenhouse technology and melded it with Walter's simpler solutions, creating a hybrid approach that could extend the growing season by weeks without expensive heaters. The magazine reporters marveled at how seamlessly the new and the old came together. Throughout the event, August took time to reflect on how drastically their lives had changed in a mere few months. The debt crisis was not fully gone, but the cooperative had grown robust enough that the looming foreclosure felt like a distant threat rather than an inevitability. Emily had just received her acceptance letter to the State University's Agricultural Sciences program, and Daniel was about to enroll in a local trade school part-time to hone his mechanical craftsmanship, both possibilities that seemed out of reach only a short time ago. Harold's health, however, was beginning to decline more noticeably. His once feeble voice grew quieter, and he tired easily. At the end of the Innovation Day, August found Harold napping in his rocker mouth, slightly open, breath shallow. Gently he knelt beside his father, a pang of sadness gripping him. He remembered his own boyhood days sitting on Harold's knee, listening to stories of Walter's unstoppable determination. Now it was Harold who seemed unstoppable, holding on just long enough to witness the farm's rebirth. The local news anchor, a woman named Lydia Wu, approached August requesting a private on-camera interview. He hesitated, not keen on public speaking, but Mary coaxed him gently, reminding him that their message needed a wider audience. During the interview, August spoke honestly about the challenges of modern farming, the role of big corporations, and the extraordinary blueprint his family discovered. In his calm, earnest voice, he explained how they had turned a near tragedy into an opportunity that united neighbors and friends. Lydia concluded by asking, "So, Mr. Whitman, what does the future hold for your farm and these designs?" August glanced at the silo, standing tall and proud. "We'll keep innovating," he replied. "We'll keep sharing. I think that's what Walter wanted more than anything, that no farmer ever feels alone in their struggle. As long as we have community and knowledge, we'll find a way forward." The anchor's camera panned across the busy yard where volunteers disassembled prototypes. Journalists took notes and visitors snapped photos. Harold watched from his vantage point, contentment etched into his features. When the crowd finally departed, leaving the Whitman family alone in a hush of sunset, August rolled Harold's wheelchair to the orchard's edge. They gazed upon the neat rows of budding trees. The old man's hand trembled, clasping August for a moment before drifting back to his lap. Autumn arrived in a blaze of amber and gold, the horizon painted with the warm hues of fallen leaves. The Whitman farm thrived in its new equilibrium. The orchard began showing the first promising fruits of the revised spacing, and the upgraded irrigation lines glistened under morning dew, delivering water efficiently without waste. The cooperative had expanded beyond the county, with farmers from neighboring states joining the ranks to learn or to invest. Emily kept track of all the paperwork while preparing for university, and Daniel spent every spare hour refining mechanical parts in a refurbished garage, already thinking up improvements that would make Walter proud. Community events became a regular fixture, and visitors flocked to see how old-school engineering meshed seamlessly with 21st century know-how. Often August would walk them through the underground workshop, letting them see Walter's original bench, the carefully labeled cogs and gears, the worn journals that still smelled faintly of ink and oil. To many, it was like stepping back in time. To August, it felt like bridging eras in a way that honored both the past and the future. Harold's presence, though diminished, remained a guiding force. He had good days when he managed to nod or smile during dinner, occasionally tapping out cryptic messages on a pad of paper. There were hard days, too, when he seemed frail and distant, staring at the silo as if longing to return to some distant memory. One crisp October morning, Harold didn't rise at his usual time. August found him still in bed, his breathing shallow. They called the doctor, who gently suggested they prepare for the worst. A hush descended on the household. Mary and the children took turns sitting by Harold's bedside, sharing stories of the farm's transformation, how neighbors came together, how the orchard was thriving, how the mechanical pumps and dispensers had spread far and wide. Harold listened, eyes half open, a faint smile curving his lips. By nightfall, with the lamp casting a soft glow, Harold mustered a faint broken whisper. "Walter, happy, me, proud." Then he closed his eyes, exhaling a final peaceful breath. In the week of mourning that followed, the community paid their respects. Filling the Whitman home with casseroles, flowers, and quiet tears, August felt the depth of his father's absence in every corner: the empty rocking chair by the window, the half-finished notes on the kitchen table. But as he walked the farm, feeling the crunch of leaves underfoot, he realized Harold had passed without regrets. He had lived to see the land he loved and the family he cherished on a path toward prosperity and unity. Shortly after Harold's funeral, the bank extended formal recognition of the Whitman's solvent status, congratulating them on the cooperative's growth. August teared up reading the letter, wishing his father could have seen this final victory. Yet in the rustle of the orchard trees, in the whir of the mechanical gears, in the faint echo of old stories, he felt Harold's spirit and Walter's lingering. Standing by the silo at sunset, August placed a hand on its weathered metal. "Thank you," he whispered, unsure if he spoke to Walter, to Harold, or simply to the land itself. Mary joined him, wrapping an arm around his waist, and Emily and Daniel stood behind each, reflecting on the improbability of it all. In the dying light, the silo's silhouette was both a monument and a promise, a legacy of perseverance, creativity, and the steadfast belief that when good people come together, no challenge is insurmountable. And so the Whitman farm stood a testament to how innovation rooted in tradition could blossom into a new era of hope, all because one family refused to give up on the place they called home. After witnessing the century-old secret revitalize not only a single farm but an entire community, it's clear that some dreams are worth preserving, from the tireless dedication of a family determined to protect their heritage to the neighbors who joined hands against all odds. Every triumph in this story feels like a victory for the human spirit. It shows us that sometimes the greatest innovations lie waiting in the most unassuming places, ready to guide us toward a more hopeful future. Thank you for sharing in this incredible journey with us. If this tale moved or inspired you, please leave a comment below and let us know your thoughts. We love hearing different perspectives and fostering a place for open, positive discussion. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay connected and be the first to discover many more heartwarming and extraordinary stories.